Hey, my name's Bruce Snell. I'm with BSG International, and today we're continuing on with our series of Applied Business Science. We're going to be focusing on today class number 17, Adding Value to Existing Skills and Training, which is in Part 4, which Part 4 of the program focuses on personal preventive and corrective actions. What we're looking at is to be able to give skills internally within the organization to help us define and enhance our existing training and kind of see where we're at. We're going to give you some both personal surveys that you can do internally, whether it's by job, by BaseWork Center, by department or by division or whatever. Also, what we're going to do is do a training audit that will in turn also help you build your BaseWork Center. Because if you look at it, we're going to be able to break down your existing training and complement it by focusing in on the 4 barriers and how it's interacting with your training program. So we'll turn now to the executive summary, and what we're going to do is look at adding value to existing skills and training, the product of lack of training. What we're saying, we talked about this in workshop number 4, which is the lack of training, which is barrier 4. The thing that we talked and discussed is that most of the training that we have out there or experience is kind of a reactive or a hit and a miss training is what we call it. The fact is we usually start training after there's been a problem or it's cost us some money, and then all of a sudden everybody's jumping and going, hey, maybe we need to do some training. What we're saying here is that the training, we need to formalize our training program across the organization on a continuous basis, other than kind of that, what we're describing as a hit and a miss. Now let's look at how do we address the lack of training. What we want you to do is to step back, and what we're going to be able to do here today is give you an audit of your existing training, of where you're at. Also, too, it's going to lead you into some directions with some parameters of some things that you can do to enhance your existing skills and your existing training program. And in that, how are we going to address it? We're again asking you to step back and schedule and get into a formalized training program, whether it is once a month, once every other week, or once a quarter. But we need to long-term plan where we're doing, because a lot of us have invested a ton of money in a lot of different training programs, and I feel a lot of us are not capitalizing on the money that we spent. With the audits today, you'll be able to find and go through and look at what your employees are feeling in regards to the training. The result, our training is going to be proactive, meaning we're not going to wait until there's a tragedy before we start training. What we're going to do is that with these audits and surveys internally, we're going to be able to come back and have a tool to look at what direction do we need to go. And we're saying let's take the long-term approach to it. Let's not look at, we got to have it by Friday or next week. It's amazing. We look back, and 5 years can go by so quick it ain't even funny. And what we're saying is just think if we'd have started. Again, if we only do a formal training program once a month, once a week, once a quarter, or once a year, set a schedule and stick to it and make it mandatory as a part of that organization. Now let's look at the training focus. If you look at the training focus, what do we really want to focus on internally within the organization? Again, everything we're doing is looking at it by BaseWork Center. Now remember, BaseWork Center is your area of expertise and control your job. We want to get everything down to that person that is doing that job, that we giving them the tools and the support in order not only to define but to train and cross-train. The understanding of the order request, we're asking the focus to look at the order request, because everybody internally in the organization is supporting one way or the other that sale of our product or service. Now, we're really asking y'all to step back and think of this concept, is that everybody in the organization is a part of supporting that order request. We're doing something to support that sale, basically. How we all provide a product and or service, internally or externally, depending on where we're at in the organization, all of us are providing a product or service. And that is either we're processing some part of the order, whether it's paperwork or we're assembling or putting together or we're supporting the folks that are doing that, or we're actually the one that are going out to do if it's service in the field, and that can be a gazillion different things. And it says data entry, collection, and reporting. We really want to look at, from the training point, how are we going to manage, plan, schedule, and monitor all this stuff that we're doing, and the data collection and reporting is very important. Next is the 4 M's. We want to break this thing down by BaseWork Center again and look at manpower, machine, materials, and methods. Next, we want to look at the managing, planning, scheduling, and monitoring, as I just mentioned, because everybody internally within the organizations, and we're going to be getting to some workshops here before too long, talking about self-managed and giving our people the tools to manage their job. And then by doing that, keeping it down where the folks are at, is that we become and are able to react to situations, and especially if we're conscious of how the 4 barriers to quality are interacting with us daily. The goal, all employees self-manage, knowing their responsibilities and responding with accuracy. So what we're looking at here is to give those skills that when the time comes that we can jump in and we contribute. And you're going to see again why the base skills are so important throughout the organization. Okay, now let's look at what are the 4 barriers to quality. There's some of y'all that are first time maybe tuning in or looking at what we're doing. We're saying the 4 barriers to quality. 98% of the problems internally within the organization are due to the 4 barriers to quality. And I kind of challenge you to go back and kind of put them out on a chart and kind of look through them. The 4 barriers to quality is fear of expression or action, lack of communication, verbal, written, lack of written procedure, and lack of training. We realize you can't train till you have written procedure developed by the people doing the job. You can't get that until you have open and honest communication. Can't do that until you remove the fear of expression or action. Then we have what we call our base values, and our whole organization and our whole concept is do what's morally and ethically correct and treat everybody as you want to be treated. We call that our 2 rules. They're the supporting 2 rules of our base values. A quality issue is something internally that it can be because of people, process, personalities. I know none of y'all ever having problems with personalities and stuff. But what we're saying here is a process that we want to just address the issue. Remember, because statistically 99% of our people are good people, is that the 4 barriers are the cause. And if we want to blame somebody, we're talking about down here, don't board the old blame plane. We're saying here, let's focus on what that issue is, put it out on the table in a constructive manner, and let's bring a solution to it without getting personally involved in it. And that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. And I tell you, I'm in a daily battle with it, trying to keep the emotion out of the deal. Now let's look at some of the leadership considerations. If you look at it, all of us are processing some step of our organization's product or service. This is what we mentioned a little earlier. We want you to really look at the whole organization and let's try to simplify what are we all doing here, because it seems like over the years we keep trying to make business more complicated than what it actually is. And if you look at it, your organization provides a product and or service, and we're all processing some step of that order request. And an order is external, and a request is internal. And if you look at things we do upon receipt of the order request, meet terms and conditions of the order request. And what we're looking at is how do we manage, plan, schedule, and monitor. Now this is at every BaseWork Center. Because one of the interesting things that have come back is that, oh, Bruce, these are all, everything you're talking about is management skills. Yes and no. We all need management skills. It was interesting years ago, I looked at it and I go, if we're training management and they're delegating to an untrained workforce, how good is their training? It ain't. So we're saying the base skills internally within the organization, everybody has to have those skills. And then the managing, planning, scheduling, and monitoring is of the 4 M's. The processing of the order request described below are the 4 M's. Manpower, machine, materials, and methods. And all of the managing, planning, scheduling, and monitoring of the 4 M's are affected by the 4 barriers to quality. Now when you ride home this afternoon, I want y'all to really think about how these 4 barriers are interacting daily. And with the issues that you're currently having, and I know y'all are all thinking of something running through your head, I want you to step back and look at how these 4 barriers apply to that particular problem. And what you're going to see is this awareness and understanding. By gaining this knowledge, you're going to be able to be very preventive, keeping it from happening, because you know the barriers and understand them. Then you're going to prevent that stuff from happening. If you look at the availabilities to process the order request, we're looking at the capacities of the 4 M's, the inventory, existing, and lead times. Because again, that's a part of the whole thing. If we sell the order, we got to make sure that we can service it internally. Data support. How do we manage and monitor the daily event action of the organization? Really, how we do that is by collecting data entry, collection, and reporting throughout the organization. That's how we manage, monitor, plan, and schedule what's happening. Also, too, it gives focus to the base work centers that in turn gives focus to the organization. And we also want to look at monthly, quarterly updates to look at kind of where we are in regards to managing, planning, scheduling, and monitoring. And that's all the way through the organization. And it says continuous improvement of our product and service, dealing with data, not emotion. We want to really be able to step back as we go through this and have these base skills through the organization to where everybody in the organization is able to contribute to and build their personal skills. And we're saying these personal based skills are transferable skills. No matter where you go in the organization, these skills are going to apply. And once you learn the skills, it's not like, okay, I forgot what's a process and step. You're going to be able to build off of what you're going to be getting through this applied business science program. Now let's look at page number 6, which is the too complex story. And what we're looking at, I'd like to read the life lesson. And the life lesson is taking one step away from logical thinking and common sense is a step in the wrong direction. We're saying here that we have really such a tendency to make it more complicated than what it is, business and life. We're saying here is that once you start getting away from what I think really trusting your gut or what you think is right or how you feel, is that we're saying you're getting away and making it a little more complicated than what it is. And it's easy to get off the beaten path because what happens, we got these folks writing all these books and stuff that have never been in business before, and they're kind of telling us based off of what their theories are on what we should be doing. It sounds good, but they never implemented half of this stuff. So what we're saying is trust your instincts, and the business and what we're doing and life ain't that complicated. We have a tendency to make it more complicated. We're asking you to step back, slow down, and think about where you're at, where you're going, and the important thing of how we're going to get there. Let's look at the next story. It's called Dust Collecting Manuals. We're looking at the life lesson. If an employee is to have a manual about their base work center with accurate processes, steps, and procedures, additional duties, the manual needs to be written by the employee. I was in one of these big companies out there that we had plants all over the world, and we're looking at I asked one of the supervisors, I said, well, where's the procedure for whatever it was? And they're going, oh, it's over there. I go, where? And it was literally on this big bookcase with a ton of these big manuals, and we call them dust collecting manuals. I said, well, like, when's the last time y'all looked at those? And they go, oh, well, we look at them whenever we need them. And I said, well, that procedure that you were just talking about, how does that person that we just hired, how do they know to look in that? Oh, they know to look in that book. So what we're saying is breaking the job down by the base work centers. Remember, who is the best person to tell us how to do the job? It's the person doing it. Who's the best person more than likely to define it with a system? The person doing the job. So this is what we're talking about. Let's not make it more complex than what it is, and let's keep that training and let's keep that base work center focused internally in that organization by that person doing the job. And you filter it up and connect it. We built the organizational structure system of both training and improvement. Now let's look at page number 9. Now this is one of the things that you're going to be able to take back. This right here is a training audit form. And if you look at that, we're going to talk about item number 1 there. It says concerns. We're going to ask you to take this thing back and audit your existing employees or co-workers to give you their top 15 concerns, or their 15 concerns, and ask them to circle the top 5. And that's going to give you an indicator kind of how your people are feeling right now in regards to their existing work environment. Item number 2 is the 4 barriers to quality audit. That's another survey that we think is very important, that you'll be able to go out there after you do this audit. You'll kind of see a pattern starting. Then you'll be able to go in and do the 4 barriers to quality audit. What that's going to do, you're going to get a look at how the fear, the lack of communication, lack of written procedure, and the lack of training, how it's affecting your employees and their thoughts. Interesting thing here is that when we're looking at the 4 barriers to quality audit, we have a tendency, because we'll ask everyone to look at themselves and look at other divisions or departments. We always grade ourselves higher than what we do our other departments, and that statistically has been proven. So that's an interesting thing. It's like we don't have the problem, they got it. Corporate citizenship. Corporate citizenship was put out by the Department of Labor years ago, asking employees and companies to look at being a good citizen. And I'm kind of curious if our boys in Washington are following this thing also. So that's a good one to look at, to kind of see what your employees are feeling, how we're interacting not only with the personnel but with our communities. Next is quality issue audit. We have a quality issue audit that they can go and look at all the processes and stuff, and we'll go in there and talk about that a little later on. But what we'll do is that you'll be able to look at it by all these items that we've been talking about and rate it 1 to 5, 5 being the strongest concern. So you'll get a pretty good overlay of what's happening internally within your organization. And we're saying, let's not make a big production out of this thing. And I would suggest if we have some training directors or quality directors or personnel managers or division or department folks out there or frontline non-management people, don't make a big deal out of this. Just do it and keep that stuff. If nothing else, audit your own department and see what the folks around you are thinking, and you're going to be flushing up some things that will be able to help your organization and yourself. If we look at part 2, training audits, we're going to go down through this here in just a second. And what this is a training audit that each individual internally within the organization is going to be able to take to their BaseWork Center. And I would suggest this is a pretty in-depth audit, or it can be a pretty quick one depending on what you want. But what it'll do is that it'll be able to give you an idea, an audit, and help you start organizing your job, or what we term your BaseWork Center. Remember, your BaseWork Center is your area of expertise and control your job. So this audit will be a good way to start laying out your BaseWork Center. Then we're also going to ask of what current existing procedure and training and stuff that you have in your BaseWork Center. And what you're going to see is that you're probably going to share a lot of the same views as everybody else around you. And remember, everything that we're talking about is really long term. We're not looking at doing this deal tomorrow or being done by the first quarter. I'd rather have it done in 5 years than not get started and do it at all, or try to run it through in 1 quarter, and then we didn't accomplish nothing but waste a lot of time and get a lot of people frustrated. Because remember, because of that fear, if you go in there, a lot of people are going to be saying, okay, why are they coming in to my job? Is there something I'm doing? And the fear, people just don't trust. And we're saying, as we've gone over these last 11 years, it takes anywhere from 12 to 14 months for people just to start believing, and that's after a consistent meeting times through basically 1 hour every other week, for them to start believe that the company is actually going to do what they said that they're going to do. Now let's look at our a concern audit. This is the one that we were talking about, as far as to go through and mark 15 of your organization concerns, your personal concerns, and what we're looking for is not necessarily what you feel is your concern. We're asking you to put the organization out there and say, okay, what do you think are some of the concerns for the organization? Because when we've done it before, saying, looking at your job, we're all doing a great job, and because of the fear, we're not, it's sometimes a little hard to be honest with ourselves. So we're asking for you to step back and look at the organization and say, what are the top 15 concerns for your organization, or the top concerns? Then we're going to ask you to circle 5 of them. And then what we're going to do is that's going to tell you what are some of the things that your employees and coworkers feel we need to be focusing on. Okay, now let's look at the next page, which is quality issue rating. What this is the one we were talking about. You can go in there and audit all this, the 4 barriers to quality, the processing and supporting of the order request, and looking at the managing, planning, scheduling, and monitoring. We're asking you to look at the systems. How do you feel about these functions in your BaseWork Center, or the comments out to the side for the company overall? Because of the frustrating thing, there's a lot of us that are doing really good things in planning and scheduling, managing, and monitoring, but where we get messed up is that another department is a little slow or a little behind the curve on that keeps like throwing a wrench into what we're doing. So if you're looking at, you have the option here to either look at your BaseWork Center or look at the organization and put your concerns on there. Also, I would suggest, because of the 4 barriers, that y'all don't have to write your name in there if you don't want to. Just kind of hand those things in. And if you're a big organization, remember, the more entrenched the 4 barriers to quality are, and also the longer you've been in business. Where we have a lot of good success is when there's a young company that is out there and they're growing and they're eager to accept. But we've got a lot of things that have crept in and set in place, and those are the 4 barriers. Now let's look at the 4 M's. We want to look at that. We want to look at the workplace profile. We want you to think about the people, personality, procedure, and process, and the systems that are involved in your BaseWork Center, and rate those on how you feel that they stand. Now, this could lead to other discussion or other groups, and we're hopefully going to be able to give you an audit here that you'll go back and help you identify and organize, and then give you a direction to start taking on these things over the next few months. Now let's look at the corporate citizenship survey. This is what we're looking at there. The Department of Labor asked us to look at, are we family friendly, the economic security, investment in employees, partnership with employees, safe and secure workplace. We're saying here, if your company right now is giving out there, and I'll probably get, well, I won't even say that. If y'all were giving to charities out there and organizations, we're saying let's give to our own people. Let's look at what we can do internally to help our own people out. If there's some issues, or even if we have some people in our organization that are having some problems, let's pitch in as an organization and help them. Let's also, too, let's give back the training of base skills that will help our people grow, that will in turn help our organization grow. Next, let's look at page number 14. Okay, this is the beginning of the process of this audit that we're talking about. If you look at it, it says define BaseWork Center worksheet. We're asking you to keep this thing at your desk for quite a while, and daily, or every time you sit at your desk, we're asking you to keep it at your desk. And if you're a forklift driver, we're asking you to pin it on a clipboard and keep it with you. If you're driving a truck, keep it with you. If you're an executive grunt, keep it in your briefcase. Put it in a file and write down all these things that you're doing. What you're going to see is that you're going to be totally amazed at all the stuff that you're doing. Now, this is going to line it up on what we're thinking is, what is the focus of your BaseWork Center? The majority of us, what we were hired to do, we're no longer doing that. So this is going to give you a good look at what in the world, how our BaseWork Center has evolved. Next, we want to look at the forms and paperwork. We've talked throughout the program why it's so important here to collect our forms and paperwork, because what happens is the paperwork, the data entry screens are going to suggest a process and a system for your BaseWork Center. And we're not asking you to print off all the screens, but print off the front screen of each of the software programs or data entry things that you're doing. And then again, that's going to give you more work than the world to do. And if you look at it, that now is starting to be our tool for training. Next, let's look at the training audit. If you look at the one column, it says D, define BaseWork Center information. We're asking you to look at, and it sounds simple, but what is my job or my title? What product or service do I provide, and who do I report to? A lot of us have never really sat down and thought about what in the world we're doing, much less who we report to. And this is a good thing to really kind of sit down and focus on. And also, too, D is we want to define our BaseWork Center type. We want to look at either your office or your manager. If you're an office or a manager or non-manager, put it up there, and then we're asking you to go through the requirements of your BaseWork Center. Look at, and is there a work center needed? Formalization of it. Is there requirements and our priorities? Is there qualification, certification, and is the training either needed or done? We're asking you to go by on each one of those items that you're listing and answer those questions, and these questions are going to be throughout this audit. Next is define BaseWork Center additional duties, existing and need. We're looking at daily duties and weekly duties. We're going to ask you to go through now again and do the same thing. And do we need to do this? And if we do have them, is it written? And do we need to further define? The existing needed, we're looking at defining BaseWork Center additional duties, and we're looking at monthly and list priorities. Look at things that you're doing monthly and look at the priorities of that job, which is in F. Next is, let's look at G. It says define BaseWork Center. We're still in the additional duties, because remember, the BaseWork Center is the focus of what your job is. Everything else is additional duties. Yes, they're a part of it, but we do not sacrifice our BaseWork Center at the expense of an additional duty. And we covered that, and we'll probably talk about that a little later again in another class. If you look at, name the requirements of that BaseWork Center. What are those things I have to have in order to qualify for that job, whether it's software, forklift training, or whatever you want to call it. Next, we want to look at what you have in regards to existing procedures. We want to look at in regards to the procedure name, and we want to go through really and just start listing what you have that's already existing or what you feel needs. The next page is K up at the top. This is an additional form that you can, it says A through K, circle what it is and add to it. The other one is just kind of a summary. Then we're going to have training and needs recommendation audit. The next page talks about what are those things that we needed and how in the world are we going to get started. So that's the audit that you can take back now to your BaseWork Center. What we have now is that if you look at we're back to our familiar BaseWork Systems 2000 kit, and that is these are the forms that are going to help us define that stuff that we were talking about process and steps and all that other stuff. If you look at, we want to look at the next page. It says where you see the X's, those are the forms that are included and need to be a part. Define BaseWork Center worksheet. This is the form that we had just talked about. Here's your blank form. And everything in here that you use, make a copy of it. Don't write on it because you'll end up ruining the thing. So we want you to take this back to your desk, and what we want you to do is, again, list everything that we're talking about, and then we're asking you to go, okay, now is that a daily, weekly, monthly priority, requirements, and as needed? This is really a good one, and it's really kind of a tough one also, because the majority of us have never been asked to settle down and think about what we're doing. And I guarantee you, every one of you are going to see that you were hired to do this, and your BaseWork Center just keeps expanding. That's where the problems come in, especially when it's an informal organization. We're off over here, we're off over here, and it's a hit and a miss. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. So it's very important to start sorting through and come to an agreement, as we've talked about, with the BaseWork Center. What is the focus of that BaseWork Center? And we actually ask, if nothing else, just talk about what in the world was I hired to do. Next, let's look at the process and step. The process and step form is what we're talking about. Is kind of like flow charting. We've heard and talked about all that stuff, and the flow charting is is that literally we used to look at it, had these little squares, and we'd try to write everything in the squares. Well, we couldn't do that, so we created a process and steps form. All that is taking whatever that particular process is and really kind of flow charting it, and out to the side is there a procedure needed? And then we're going to tell you that example that we're going to have to write a procedure. Okay, so let's look at the next page, is the second page of that process and step form. Next is our thought process. And what we're doing there is that we're trying to give you an outline for some procedure. Because we discovered real early into it that as we were learning how to do all this stuff, that our team members would go out into the organization and bring back a procedure. And you're going to be just totally amazed at how good your employees are going to do with this thing. And that they would come in with a procedure and they'd forget something. And that's the great thing about getting everybody in that BaseWork Center to agree on it, is the fact that by the time we sign off, come to a consensus agreement by all the BaseWork Centers, is that you're going to have a good procedure. This will help us organize our thoughts, because we have to organize our thoughts because we want to make sure that we're covering all those issues in that particular procedure. We're saying this isn't mandatory, but at least up front, it's a real good thing to look at. It's also a good form to use when you're going into a meeting or some training stuff, because what that's going to do is that's going to help you look at and organize, when we're talking about these things, what in the world that we need to ask questions on to make sure we're doing the right thing. Next is our BaseWork Center procedures form. Okay, we talked about up at the top, and everything we're looking at, we're asking you to log what is that BaseWork Center. Because remember, we want to have every BaseWork Center that's affected by the problem involved in defining it. And also, too, as we continuously improve this stuff, we want to make sure if we're changing a procedure or process and step, that we're getting everybody that's involved, and that's going to tell us who is involved in this particular procedure and the reference step of where it came from. The next page is the second page of that thing. The next one, let's look at the next form, which is a training implementation. This is one of the more important things, and that is to make sure in this training and implementation that not only we lay the written procedure down, but we train it. Remember, we can't hold accountable until we have agreed on that, we've had training on it, and our BaseWork Centers have signed off on the deal. So we're looking at being able to go back, go through and audit our existing BaseWork Center, look at what we're doing, starting to organize all these actions and interactions of what we're going to be doing, kind of sort through them, do this audit, and get a good visual picture of where we're at and with our BaseWork Center. And that's also going to suggest these action steps of what we need to do. So right now, what we're going to do is that we're going to, I'd like to introduce Mike Demma. Mike Demma is basically have been in the training and industry for over 36 years, and he's been with over 170 companies worldwide, and basically he is probably an authority in corporate America in regards to training. He's had a lot of different backgrounds. We've asked Mike to come in because of his vast experience to give you guys some thoughts of the existing programs and where y'all are at right now and how you can take and use this program to benefit all those dollars that you've invested, whether it's ISO, Six Sigma, any of this stuff that we're talking about. So we'll take out about 20 minutes, and we're going to ask Mike to talk to y'all, and then we'll see you right after Mike with some final questions and stuff. We'll see you in just a minute.
Thank you, Bruce. My name is Mike Demma, and I'm here today to talk to you about what I consider to be one of the most exciting quality programs that I've seen in the last 36 years that I've been involved in business and education. And of course, I'm referring to the Bruce Snell programs, 4 Barriers to Quality, and the Applied Business Certificate Program. My experience for the past 36 years has been 26 years in the Eastman Kodak Company, where I served in a variety of jobs, everything from a manufacturing environment to a staff environment, Along the way, I had the opportunity to serve as a manager of a quality organization, the manager of the personnel organization, and the manager of the training organization. I also had the opportunity to be one of the primary coordinators for Eastman Kodak Company in the introduction of the ISO 9000 National Quality Standard Program, which of course started back in the late 80s, early 90s. In that capacity, I guided Eastman Kodak Company to 17 registrations of facilities throughout the world. Upon retiring from Kodak, I started an international consulting business, and that international consulting business for the last 10 years has allowed me to work with over 170 companies throughout the world. These companies range from mom and pop operations with 7 to 10 employees to multinational organizations with tens of thousands of employees and located geographically around the world. Upon retiring from the international consulting business, I was introduced to Bruce Snell and asked if I could comment on his book, The 4 Barriers to Quality, but more importantly, to comment on the program that he was offering with regard to the 4 Barriers to Quality. After reviewing the materials, after reviewing the program and the processes offered by Bruce, I called Bruce and said, I would like to be involved with your program. To me, it represented the most complete, the most comprehensive program on quality that I have seen in the past 36 years. It also represented a program that was not a replacement for other quality programs which companies have had the occasion to work with, but instead it represented a program that could augment, supplement, complement those programs that organizations were using. The beauty of the program is that it's geared for both the individual within an organization and the organization in total. Today, if I could take a few minutes of your time, I want to talk about the value of the program to both individuals and the organization. Those of you currently enrolled in the Applied Business Certificate Program already have a keen awareness of the base values associated with Bruce's program. You've already had the occasion to see how your awareness to those values, how your learning of those values, and then most importantly, your utilization of those values will benefit you as an individual in any work environment or home environment that you may be associated with. The value to you as an individual is that it will provide you with those base values, that foundation that will allow you to be a contributor in your organization. Now, in Session 17 of the Applied Business Certificate Program, it talks about what you as an individual can do to take these base values back to your organizational environment. Now, I know many of you are saying, but we're not in a position to take this back to introduce the base values to our organization. But what the session will provide you with is an awareness of several surveys that you can administer or have someone administer in your organization. And what those surveys will do is it will describe and point out clearly to the organization exactly how the 4 Barriers to Quality program can impact them and can impact the day-to-day business that they're involved in. So in addition to enhancing your own individual skills, there is a unique opportunity for your organization to benefit from the 4 Barriers to Quality. Now, when we talk organizationally, I know all organizations have been exposed to a variety of programs over the years. And you could categorize organizations in 3 different categories, if you will. Those organizations who do not have much in the way of an infrastructure, have not worked on quality-related programs, and are really searching for a place to start, a foundation on which to build. You have those organizations that over the years have introduced a number of total quality management programs, but these programs have had a varying degree of effectiveness and success. I'm sure all of you are aware of what we typically call the programs of the month, which are the programs introduced to companies, implemented, but then when asked what value did the company receive, what return on investment did they have, the organization doesn't have complete answers to support or sustain a continuation of that program. A third set of organizations are organizations that have effectively introduced quality management programs throughout the years. Included in these organizations are those organizations that have in fact been certified or registered to the national quality standards such as ISO 9000 and QS 9000. Those organizations too need to continually be looking at ways they can improve or they can enhance that which they have. The 4 barriers to quality has application, practical application, in all 3 organizations. First and foremost, the 4 barriers to quality gives you as an organization the opportunity to assess or determine where you're at as an organization. Because if you as an organization aren't aware of where you're at, what your organizational climate is, what your quality climate is, it's very difficult to plan and then execute where you want to go. So in the 4 barriers to quality, what you will do is have the opportunity to assess where your needs are in the organization. And then once you've assessed where those needs are, the 4 barriers to quality process very effectively provides you with a process, allows you to develop a plan to in fact move forward in your organization. So if you're an organization who has not had the time or taken the time to implement quality management process activities, but clearly you see the need to do that, then the 4 barriers of quality will represent a process for you to introduce to your organization. Let's talk about the bulk of the organizations out there. Those of you that over years have been introduced to a variety of quality management programs, or a variety of processes or systems, if implemented in the organization, can enhance, add value, provide you with a return on investment. Too many times, those programs are ineffective. Too many times, those programs don't add value. And too many times, an organization comes away from a program that's quality related with a bad taste, with the feeling that here we go again. Here's another one of these programs that's going to offer us this, but provide only a portion of that. After 36 years in business and industry, I can assure you that the 4 barriers to quality is a program that will allow your organization to develop a business infrastructure. It will allow your organization to effectively implement processes that will be beneficial to the organization. And it is a program that will allow you to continually improve on those things which you currently are involved in, which you currently are applying, and which currently are paying dividends to your organization. The whole premise of the 4 barriers to quality is based on the individual. Now, we've talked about the Applied Business Certificate Program, and if you attend that particular program, in addition to receiving CEU credits, you also have the benefit of enhancing your own individual skills, or base values, as we refer to them in the program. But as an individual, you are looked upon to make a contribution to your organization. We quite often talk about employees as being the most important asset that an organization has. But unfortunately, we don't take advantage of that asset as organizations. What the 4 barriers to quality will do is provide you with a program, with a series of processes that are geared to the individuals in the organization. Because as the individuals in the organization become involved, as the individuals in the organization are asked to contribute, as the individuals in the organization are part of the process, then the organization in entirety benefits. So everything that you'll see in the 4 barriers of quality is geared toward the individual. I might add that everything you'll see in the 4 barriers to quality is also based on practical application, practical experiences, not theoretical approaches. All that is contained in the program is based on actual experiences of people like you in the work environment. As you go through the program, it will be very easy for you to quickly relate to some of those experiences. Because I would dare say that there's not a person out there viewing this video who has not experienced some of these situations in either the organization you currently work in or in a previous organization that you worked in. So everything is built on practical experiences. Again, during my tenure as a training and personnel director with the Eastman Kodak Company, what I found was the most effective training programs offered were those training programs where simulations, exercises, practical application were utilized. Because that gives you an opportunity to apply what you've learned. Once again, too many times, courses provide you with information that's informative, that's interesting, that gets you enthusiastic. But they don't provide you with the process to take that information back to your organization and effectively implement it so that your organization can grow and develop and continuously improve. In the 4 barriers to quality, you have that opportunity. If you are an organization who has been certified to a national standard, or if you're an organization that's had great success with a total quality management program such as Six Sigma or process management, you know that the success of that program will only continue if the processes, the systems that have been put in place will continue to grow and continue to improve. That's where the 4 barriers to quality, to me, has proven to be such an effective program. It will augment that which you are doing. It will take those successes that you have and allow you to improve on those successes. It will allow you to implement processes that will very effectively complement other processes that are in place. It will allow you to provide your employees with processes, with systems, with approaches that allows them as individuals to improve, therefore improving the organization. So whether you look at this program from an organizational perspective that says we need a foundation, we need a starting point, or whether you look at this program from the perspective of saying we feel good about what we're doing right now, but we are committed to continuously improve. The 4 barriers to quality represents a program that can assist you very effectively in every one of those regards. If you look at the 4 barriers outlined in Bruce's program, you'll see that they are very much at the heart of what we do on a day-to-day business in our lives, whether it be in the work environment, whether it be in the social environment, whether it be in our family environment. Fear of expression. If an organizational climate is such the people don't feel comfortable to express how they feel. If an organizational climate is such that individuals are not asked to be involved in the process, then the chances of that organization being effective and effectively implementing anything of a program nature are very limited. So the 4 barriers to quality first addresses the involvement of the people, getting the people to feel comfortable about what they do. The mechanism to do that is communications, which is a second barrier. So however effective your communications programs are, the 4 barriers of quality will show you how to improve on your communicational systems. Whether that's communications from the top down, whether that's communications laterally across the organization, whether that's communications of a verbal or a written nature, the 4 barriers of quality will allow you to expand on the effectiveness of your communications. The third barrier is define and document. What better way to have an organization define and document what's being done on a day-to-day basis than to go to the people that are doing the work. People involvement in the process is significant. My own experience in helping to register, certify over 170 companies throughout the world in the ISO 9000, QS 9000 national standard was that those organizations that most effectively implemented the program, and more importantly, those organizations that sustained the effectiveness of that program, were those organizations that involved their people from the very start. Because again, I repeat, who more appropriate than an individual to define what it is that's being done? And every organization should accept responsibility for working with an individual in defining what they expect of that individual. The marriage between the individual input and the organizational needs is one of the 4 barriers to quality program advantages that will be offered to you. Finally, training. Billions of dollars being spent by American business and industry and international business and industry on training. Once again, too many times, the training is not specific to the organization. It's not specific to what the individuals within the organization need to do the job. So training becomes that 4th barrier. Again, can you improve? Can you enhance the training in your organization so that it is now throughout the organization? Once again, the 4 barriers to quality program will provide you with the skills, provide you with the processes to accomplish that. As you can see, the 4 barriers to quality is an organizational program of tremendous benefit. If you elect to attend the Applied Business Certificate program as an individual, it will equally have the same impact on you as an individual. So the program really offers business and industry the opportunity to look at base values, to look at skill building, to look at improving your organization from both an individual and an organizational point of view. Once again, I thank you for the opportunity to give you my thoughts with regard to what I consider to be the most comprehensive, complete program on quality for an organization. Thank you very much.
Mike, we really appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us today. And it's really appreciate some insight of your 36 years of experience. There's very few of us that have been out there with that kind of experience. Really appreciate your time. Let's look at now our frequently asked questions and our thoughts. We'd like to kind of sum up our workshop on where we're at and kind of what we've talked about here today and some of the frequently asked questions. Number one, what do you mean informal training program? What we're saying is that most of the training programs internally within organizations are kind of a hit and a miss and are informal. We kind of change or train whenever we have a problem or whenever something's happening and it's cost us money. We kind of have some training going in some departments, some going in others. And that was the interesting thing, that when I got started a decade ago, that they were doing a lot of training, especially starting with this ISO stuff. And I'm going, well, doesn't the rest of the organization need to be involved in it? Because what was curious to me, again, if we're doing quality here and we don't have the systems and processes to support that, how good is our training? So what we want to look at is that we've done that BaseWork Center audit. We want to be able to go in and look at long-term, what are those things that we can put a formalized training program in place. Do the 4 barriers to quality exist? Do the 4 barriers to quality affect existing training? Yes, it does. Because again, we had some certification in one of our plants that were doing computer cabling. And because we had some fear with a frontline supervisor, there was some product that was going out in order to meet quotas that were not quality. And so our people couldn't speak up. Everybody there knew what the issues were and what was going on, but because of the fear, that's the reason a lot of this stuff that's going out there, we're not looking at all these issues that affect our people. We have a tendency to focus on the tangible stuff, which is the process. We're saying let's involve all our people, and you can't take one barrier without the other. We got to focus on all 4 of them. How will the quality issue audit help? This will be able to go through by BaseWork Center, by department, by division, by organization, and literally go through and give kind of a thumbnail look at what's happening internally within my BaseWork Center or department or division. And out of that, you're going to get some very good insight on some of the things that we need to be focusing on by that BaseWork Center. Now, if we have some folks with a formal training program or department, we're saying, training department, help bring this structure through the organization, because you got everyone that is doing that job will become good trainers for you to help you out. Remember, who's the best person to tell you how to do the job? The person doing it. What do you do with the defined BaseWork Center worksheet? We want you to just keep that at your desk, and we want you to write down things daily as you do them, and you're going to be surprised at all the stuff that you're doing. Why collect the forms and paperwork? Remember, we've said repeatedly that the forms and the paperwork are going to suggest systems of your BaseWork Center. How can we use the BaseWork Center audit, training audit? Go through and look at your BaseWork Center and see all those things that are happening, and not only is it going to identify it, it's going to give you a corrective action to fix that thing with everybody in the organization. When do we usually start training? Again, we're saying we usually start training after there's a problem, and usually after it's cost us money and everything. Describe the training and implementation process. This is where a lot of organizations I saw kind of fell down on the job. They spent all this money, time, energy, and effort to do this training, but they really fell down on the implementation, meaning that making sure everybody received the training. We kind of made a copy and sent it out to everybody. But this training implementation form, not only will they get training, but they'll sign off on it, because we can't hold anyone accountable until they have signed off that they've received that training by their BaseWork Center. And so let's step back and look at what we've talked about today. We've given you some tools to go back in and look at those BaseWork Centers throughout the organization that'll help give you not only where you're at, but a corrective action to be able to help bring a formalized training direction to your organization or enhance your existing training and base skills. If again, we really appreciate your time. We look forward to seeing you at some of our other classes. And remember, be kind to your people. Thank you.